Hey, welcome to Justice Serve TV. Michael
Whoa,
Bryant here, and
whoa,
sorry,
prop.
I was just Linda Kenny Bodden there. I was just, I was out doing my droning, my every night droning. It's not a big deal. Nobody even notices. Nobody says a thing about it. Oh, you said something? Yeah. Anyway, so these drones.
Wait, do that again. Do that again. But that I understand that the drones are talking about it. I mean, I saw some shows, and I won't say which shows. Fox Network had a 15-foot one and a big drone, to show us what the military drones look like. Did you find that in the backyard, or did you
Yeah,
buy that?
no, I've had drones for many years.
Oh,
Lost a few. I've donated a few that get out of my control and land in some pond. Yeah, I just thought
That's not infrared. Pretty eyes. What does Michael do?
control.
What does he have? He's got a little controller.
Got the
Somehow
control.
I don't think Michael Bryant and Justice Serve TV are disrupting everybody.
Well,
Even my sister is now saying she's got people seeing drones.
it's ridiculous, and I'm telling you, anybody flies a drone over my house, I shooting that mother down. So
Well,
be warned.
technically there's a case law. You can't do that. That's not your
Oh,
property.
I'll worry about it after the fact.
Even a
I'll
cops.
worry about it after
You're
the
gonna
fact.
excuse
I
me,
claim
as
property
as I
rights
come
up
out here and
through
laugh.
the air. So
Yeah, well, I don't know. Do you have air rights? You have air rights?
yeah,
I don't know.
I view rights, but I don't know how far it goes with the
Yeah,
air.
well, there's
But
a case in New Jersey that says you can't do that, but we'll see
yeah,
if you
I'll
do it,
do it.
whether or not you have to call. Do you know any good lawyers?
Yeah, any drone lawyers?
Any drone lawyers? Well, it's about to get very interesting because somebody is going to shoot one down, and
I
it's not
hope
going to be a
so.
little one.
It's
Well,
the
but
most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
But
And
you
now
don't
you have
know the problem is you don't know now if it's if they're the real ones or people are copycatting and kids are having groups and doing it because
well,
there's so
if you're
many of
stupid
them.
enough to be doing it like because it's a cool thing now and everybody's all concerned that there are some UFOs, then you deserve to have your drone shot down. You've got the security guy. I can't remember his name now. He was a former rear admiral of some sort, but he made the statement that I cannot believe that, well, we checked into this and most of them are manned aircraft, so it's fine. Hello, are you in there? Hello, are you? Hello. They're not manned aircraft. Are you kidding me? How stupid is this guy?
In the Middle East, they're killing people. That's you and I are a little bit older. We didn't grow up with the drones, right? We didn't grow up with
Did not grow up with drones, no.
With the drones. But that's what they're, that's when you have a military person, the young people, that's what they're doing. And they're manning them, they're killing people, they're shooting, they're weaponized. They're weaponized. Okay, show your drone again. Show your drone again.
Hey, that's a personal thing. Here's my drone. Yeah. Yeah. Get in there. Quiet down. It's a manned drone. So
all right,
like all of them are.
Let me ask you this.
Right.
Is there a drone? This is a question. This is like a $2,000 Jeopardy question. Is there a drone in the Karen Reed case?
Oh my gosh. Hey, before we get to that, I know this is I have a list of pet peeves. Remember this issue?
Yes.
The mug. I'll call it Mug Gate. So I go to the post office because that's where I sent this through, and it goes through customs and these little stamps on here. For those who don't remember, this was going to Sheila in Ireland, and it comes back after 2 months, and there's a little stamp on it that just says return to sender, rejected, failed electronic customs clearance.
Well, how could you?
It's a ceramic mug, and I go to the post office. And let me paraphrase what their response was. That was their response. I said, "Well, you're the shipper. Do you have any suggestions?" No, we think it might have been, in Ireland they did it. So I have to now track down somebody in Ireland, customs, and say, "What do you need?"
Sheila, where are you?
To convince you.
Where's Sheila?
Yeah, Sheila, it might be cheaper for me to just get on a plane and bring this to you. But I mean, what do they think this is? I know Ireland has some issues, especially Northern Ireland, and there's some conflict there. What is it? Exploding coffee mug? Anyway, so that's the latest on that, and I'm so annoyed by the whole process, but I'm not giving up. Anyway, should we get to what we got here for in the first place?
Yeah,
forget what it was. Okay, the plan is
starting with some questions on what we got here for in the first place. Although, if you want to take the bigger picture philosophically of what we got here in the first place, maybe we shouldn't be doing anything like this. Maybe we should be talking about our dogs.
Okay. I'll catch up with you in a minute on that. So anyway, Missy says drone mug. Yeah, if I chuck this in the sky, I guess it could be a drone mug. Anyway, so yesterday was the big hearing in Karen Reed. Everybody knows, of course, Karen Reed, hung jury the first time. They tried to get her for the death of John O'Keefe, her boyfriend, hit by a car, says the prosecution. her car. She's driving. He falls in the snow. He dies of exposure and other things.
Do we still have a car? Do we still have a car?
Oh gosh, I do. Where did I put that? I'm not prepared. Oh,
Michael Bryant, as you know, actually went out and bought a
I do have
model
this. I have
of
this
the car, and he also
have
has he
this.
bought the actual tail light
From Alexis.
not of that car, but from that model
Hey,
of the car.
With the Canton police, they would have sold it to me. Yeah, I can see the cars up on my shelf. I can't quite get to it. We'll get to that soon enough because it's going to be very important as we continue to follow this case. We know the trial's been delayed. It was going to be January 27th. Now April-ish. Both the prosecution and well, that's what they asked for, but the court never rubber stamped that, so it's just been kind of pushed off to April sometime. So where we are now is the prosecution brought a motion to exclude Dr. Russell, the dog bite expert, I guess we can call her, and then there was an opposition to that, of course, by the defense saying, "What are you talking about? She was qualified. She testified in the first case. We're not, she's staying." And then we got this document, and I was looking. I posted this on because you see the handwritten note there on the bottom. That's from Bev. That's well, this one pager is
Judge Bev to you, Michael.
Judge Madam Bev. It's only because I know Canone, I think is how you pronounce her name. I'm bound to screw that up, so I'm sticking with Bev. So this has a handwritten note on the bottom by the judge, and it's written on the bottom of the defendant's opposition to the prosecution. Okay, and it says it's handwritten. It says denied, but then the handwriting goes on to say we're going to have this Daubert hearing.
It's pronounced Daubert. I'm trying to educate you. It's Daubert.
How would you pronounce my name in France?
I don't know, but the family has come out and they've said about the attorney.
The Daubert family came out and said that's how you pronounce it.
Daubert, right? When they had the hearing, it was Daubert.
I'm going to fact check that.
You go fact check that.
I'm going to fact check that. And what's the name of the?
Are you a betting person, Michael Bryant?
Oh, of course. I like to wager. I like a good wager. And Lanigan is the local or the Massachusetts case that basically incorporates it. Like in California, it used to be called Kelly Fry, and now, of course, it's not. But they always incorporate the state version.
I filed a Lanigan hearing to get on the ballistics and the judge, yes. But I didn't want witnesses. I just wanted a hearing where we could argue. And the judge said, "Well, you can argue all that at trial," which is all I was looking for. But yes, they're called different things in the States.
It was just odd that she would write the word denied and then basically say we're going to have this hearing. So that's what they had yesterday, and it was a doozy. So we're going to go through a lot of it because it's important for so many reasons. The foundation, of course, is this. The defense is saying the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm were primarily dog bite type injuries. That in fact, it was a struggle. It was a dog attack, she ultimately says. And why is that important? Well, because the prosecution says those injuries and others came from her hitting with the car. So if the defense
I think I'm an expert on dog bites. Let's see. I have the scars here. I can't do my leg, but it's scars on my leg from a German Shepherd. There it is. It's still there.
Mine was, how old were you when you got yours?
Oh, 7, 10, I was 13. I've had so many dog bites and boxer, German Shepherd, another dog. I mean, not my own dog, but
right, of course. Right. I only had one dog bite incident. I was about maybe 12. I was riding a bike. Dog just kind of charging at me, and I got off the bike and sort of kind of like tossed the bike at the dog. The dog leapt over the bike and got me right there. Ooh. Yeah, like it just took a bit like a chunk.
Yeah, I had one
pushed it back in there.
They push it back in.
Now I have a third nipple right there. That's what I ended up having. So.
Yeah, but I had on my legs. I was a kid. I was on top of a tree, and this dog was like a mile away. Right, got out of the car, went running, and bit me. And then another one was a bicycle, and another one was just I was trying to get a dog from attacking my dog, and I got in my hand, so in my thumb. Yeah, but we used to. I think they were a lot more common. I don't know. It seems to me they were a lot more common a while back. Now everyone sues and everyone restrains the dog, but. I wasn't scared. I've had 3 dog bites. All right, there you go. And one of them was a German Shepherd. So I think I am an expert. And I've had a bunch of German Shepherds also. So
well, we'll see if she doesn't qualify, maybe you'll qualify. Risa says that I could have walked into the Canton PD and taken that light out. They wouldn't even know. that is frighteningly close to true. So what we want to do is just run some of this hearing and just make comments as appropriate or inappropriate, and talk about the
Can we
importance of
explain
what.
what Daubert is? Can we explain what a Daubert?
Oh yeah,
Daubert
I'll let
is?
you run wild with that.
Okay, so the U.S. Supreme Court some years back, okay, decided there was too much in terms of junk science in the courtroom. Not that they've corrected anything by the Daubert standard, okay. It used to be a Kelly Fry hearing, and it was if people in your community thought, one other person thinks this is valid science, it got in, right? So they try to tighten that up by having. And it was through a civil case, actually, it wasn't a criminal case, by having expert testimony, under there was the Federal Rules of Evidence, Rule 702, in case you get, you're on jeopardy, and what is Rule 702 of the Federal Rules of Evidence? It requires that expert testimony be that's scientific or technical or some other specialized knowledge, like, knowledge of the drone that you have. That it gets raised before a judge. You have a hearing before a judge. The judge is the, quote, gatekeeper to make sure that junk science does not get before the jury. And so a lot of states didn't adopt that for many years. Now some have adopted it. Some are Kelly Fry, Daubert, like mixtures. Others are just Daubert states. Others are Fry states. What we normally find, though, is in a criminal case, the prosecution's experts, even if they may be a little unscientific, always get through Daubert. But in a civil case, the plaintiff's experts seldom get through Daubert. It's a kind of an interesting thing, and there's six criteria, but we can go through those as we discuss what's happening.
Yeah, and what's the classic not allowed evidence? It's been this way forever. Polygraphs.
Polygraphs. Polygraphs. Yeah. Facial recognition.
Although that's getting better.
That's getting
better. The goal is, the one sentence standard is, it needs to be accepted by the relevant scientific community. That's the goal. If you hit that mark in the judge's eyes, then it's coming in. So that's the background for this.
Because usually it means it's been tested, or it's been reviewed by the peers, or it's been published.
It's credible. It's
credible, or it has an error rate, and that's where a lot of the science has been going, to try to establish error rates, so that hey, like, just look at you take a plane up in the sky, right? Or you look for a drone up in the sky, but you take a plane up in the sky, how likely is that plane likely to crash, right? And then there's usually published studies on that, right? Maybe 1/10 of 1%, 100th, 1,000, whatever it is. So they're trying to do that so that when a jury assesses scientific evidence, they can say, well, it's got a 10% error rate, so maybe 10% of the time this person could be wrong. So that's the goal.
And maybe that's too much. So here is this is the very beginning, and I think it's important so we set the scene, because we have some new players, and so we'll get used to two new faces in this case. That's not. I was going to say that's an old face, but that's not really what I meant. That's Judge Bev, of course.
Judge, this is 22117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Can I have counsel identify themselves for the record, starting with the Commonwealth?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Good morning, Your Honor. Hank Brennan for the Commonwealth. Along with me is Attorney Adam Lally and Attorney Laura McLaughlin.
Good morning, Mr. Brennan. Good morning, Mr. Lally. Good morning, Ms. McLaughlin.
Okay, so there's the new dude, Mr.
Good morning,
Brennan.
Your Honor. Alan Jackson on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Good morning, Your Honor. Elizabeth Little, also on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Ms. Little.
Good morning, Your Honor. David Unetti for Karen Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Unetti.
And
good morning, Your Honor. Robert Alessi for Ms. Reed.
Good morning.
Can we stop it right there?
Good
Can we
morning,
stop it
Ms.
right there, Michael?
yes, we can.
Because Risa asked, I think, do I know Robert Alessi? I do not know Robert Alessi. He's never appeared in the scientific areas, forensic evidence, in cases that I've tried, so I don't know him. But that doesn't mean he's not good. I love to watch new attorneys.
And I have deemed Mr. Jackson Wolverine. He has a bit of a new look, and so we'll see if he changes. Some guys like winter beards, and then they get rid of them in the spring. We'll see. So again, this is a little different procedurally, because even though it is the prosecution challenging the defense witness, the defense still has to lay the foundation for that witness before it gets torn down on cross-examination. So normally in a case, the moving party has the burden and starts the process. But really, in this case, it's the responsive party, the defense, because it's their witness. They want to make sure that witness qualifies. So moving on.
All right. So for today, we have our Daubert hearing. I asked through Mr. Clerk the
She
parties
said it wrong
to have a
too.
proposed scheduling order
Well,
for
she's
me. Were you
from
able to do
Massachusetts,
that?
so you know you got to work that in.
We've begun the discussions of it. I think we could have it shortly, Your Honor. I have some proposals by the defense. I just want a few moments to reflect on it.
Okay. All right. So during a recess or something, I'd like you to at least give me something so that we can discuss it today. There are some discovery motions and then just some housekeeping matters. So I would like to get started right away. Is Dr. Russell here?
Anybody triggered yet by
Okay. Oh,
Judge
good
Bev?
morning, Doctor. Would you come on up to the witness stand, please?
Okay. So take a look at the crowd. You can see there was Karen Reed's dad. A lot of the usual suspects are out there.
You know, in California, you can't show that courtroom like that after the OJ trial. You're not
I
allowed to
remember.
show that.
I love
Thank
it
you
because
very
it
much.
really, when there's some breaks, you really get some interesting visuals of the people in the gallery. So we're going to show a little of this setup, but not getting bogged down on it because the cross is really the good stuff.
I do. Good morning, Dr. Russell.
I'm leaning into
Okay, the
listen.
defense is calling Dr. Russell as a witness. Jim, can I have the exhibits? Will counsel need the exhibits for examination of this witness, or can I have them with me and look at them?
Your Honor, whatever your preference is, we will abide by that. We may want to publish some at
Sure,
appropriate time.
that's no problem, but I can keep the notebook, that's not a problem?
Oh, yeah, that's intended for your use, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, thank you.
This is our first chance to check this guy out, too.
All right, go right ahead, counsel.
Your Honor, if I may, a couple of matters before Dr. Russell testify, with Your Honor's permission.
Okay,
One will take 15 seconds, and the other will take maybe 3 minutes.
okay, is it something that Dr. Russell can remain in the courtroom for?
It is.
Okay,
And
Sure.
if at any point I'm incorrect in that assumption, I'm sure you will tell me.
okay,
First of all, the first order
He, by
is
the
I wanna
way,
thank
is
the court for
he, by the way, is admitted
granting
pro hoc
my
vice, just
permission
like
to
I
practice.
was in Hernandez.
Yes,
He's admitted
and
pro hoc
pro
vice,
hoc
which-
vice, one of my favorite Latin phrases, which
that- for
just
this
means
case.
with the court's permission, basically,
but-
because
but it's
he's
for
out of
that.
the jurisdiction. Yeah.
Right.
Before the court,
okay.
and I'll strive to comport myself to honor the opportunity I've been given.
Thank you.
A little bit of butt kissing there.
Secondly, with regard to the decision that Your Honor rendered with regard to our opposition to the motion, the reason I just wanted to raise that briefly is I wanted to make sure that I properly discharge my role in terms of a record. It won't be a long soliloquy, but I just wanted to point out to Your Honor the basis for why I am having this colloquy with the court.
Okay, is it in addition to what you have in your writings?
It is.
Or is it, okay, so that I'll let you talk about, but,
Yeah, I'm not going to go into the substance of the writings.
okay.
Okay, I'm going to save you that because he's really just making additional arguments that suggest, hey, we got a good expert here. She's good. She should be qualified, and we shouldn't even be here arguing about it. So then they continue and they get into her foundation, which we've talked about before, and she's obviously testified to before. She's done 500 plus autopsies. She was an EMT emergency room doctor, both for civilians and in a prison. So she's had a lot of experience with traumatic type injuries, including dog bite injuries. And so let's get into, let me zoom ahead here to one of the things she talks about, one of the things that's challenged by the prosecution, is her report apparently changed. Remember, there was a grand jury testimony, and then there was her trial testimony. And they're suggesting, the prosecution is suggesting, that not only don't those square, that she changed things a bit, but now the proposed new testimony changes things a bit. You know, my gut feeling is it's going to go to the weight, not the admissibility, but, you know, you can then challenge her and say, well, why'd you change this? Why'd you change that? But that's just my guess. There was no decision made
Because I got more information on the trial that lasted here for months.
the cross never got done today. So we're going to see a chunk of it, but it never got done. So let me move ahead here. What was that? What was that shot? Oh, okay. Oh, somebody's zooming in to check their focus. Okay, let's get to where they start talking about bite patterns, which I think are probably as important as anything in this case. So let's get there. Try this out. Here we go.
Sort of passed, so to speak, the peer review,
Yes,
and then it became published?
yes.
Let's now move on to the topic of publications, seminars, talks, lectures.
Let's not.
These are
Let's
these
not.
Daubert standards. These are these.
Let's
Daubert
move
standards.
on. This is all foundational, just to make sure that she's, got the goods to at least talk about what she's talking about.
Pattern.
Right.
A
Okay,
pattern
patterns.
that I've seen before, a pattern that I am familiar with. And sometimes in the past, I had to compare a pattern to an object, for instance. But yes, wound recognition and pattern recognition are major interests of mine.
Is wound pattern recognition a topic that is taught in medical school?
In residency, for sure.
And what is taught in residency about wound pattern recognition generally?
Well, in emergency medicine residency, it's taught to recognize patterns and locations of wounds because the physician has to be able to recognize things like child abuse and elder abuse and domestic violence, which oftentimes are associated with specific patterns of injuries.
Is wound pattern recognition considered a standard of care, you used that term earlier today, in the medical profession, in the emergency department? Is that something is wound pattern recognition an area that an emergency room physician is trained in?
Yes.
And how frequently, in your experience as emergency room physician, do you exercise pattern wound recognition?
I can't tell.
Is it frequent or infrequent?
Oh, frequent.
Why is assessing the source of bite wounds, well, let me go backwards. Is assessing bite wounds important in the practice of medicine in the emergency department?
Is assessing the source of bite wounds?
Is it important?
Yes, it is very.
Why?
Well, because different types of bite wounds are treated differently.
Does the assessment affect the care and treatment that the patient is going to receive?
Yes.
How?
Okay. Well, certain bite wounds are prone to certain infections. So dog wounds are prone to certain infections, cat wounds, various other animals that inflict wounds cause infections. And the infections can differ from the inflicting animal. Additionally, so there are bacterial infections. There are also viral infections, such as rabies. So, for instance, some types of wounds, wounds from some type of animals will require a series of rabies shots because those animals are known to harbor rabies. So it's very important to try to figure out what the source of the wound is so you can determine, does the person just need some antibiotics and a tetanus shot, or do they need a series of rabies shots?
Are there circumstances in which you've had to identify the source of wounds without input from the patient?
Yes.
Describe those.
Well, there may be a language barrier, or sometimes with a child will have a bite, but we don't know what bit the child. So yes.
Or the person could be dead. So let's move along.
But isn't usually the person alive on the
Yeah, these are, again, this is all foundational stuff. We haven't gotten really to specifics about.
But you did hear her say in the questions, he asked, has your theory been tested? Has you been reviewed by peers? He hasn't done rate of error. Is accepted that there's wound patterns? Is it accepted? Have you been published? You heard her say those criteria, right?
I mean, they're ticking off the boxes for what the court needs to hear to say, you are an expert. Okay, this is, again, focusing on dog bites. Then you'll get to hear, this will be triggering for some folks, one of Judge Bev's favorite lines. So
Yes.
Now let's go on to characteristics of dog bites and scratch wounds. Do you know approximately how many dog bite wounds present to the emergency room in the United States on an annual basis?
Yes, it's over 300,000 estimated.
and that's just Linda.
And
What's mine?
how do you know that
those.
estimate?
From the medical literature.
And is that medical literature you have read and are aware of?
Yes.
Which medical specialty, do you know what I mean by medical specialty?
Yes.
Which medical specialty sees the most dog bite inflicted wounds?
Well, I believe it's the emergency physician because we're the gatekeepers, so to speak.
Do you have a conclusion whether emergency room physicians have more exposure to and familiarity with dog bites than other specialists?
Ask it differently.
Thank you.
Ask it differently. Drinking game.
Do ER physicians have more exposure to and familiarity with dog bites than others?
Yeah, sustain for the same reason, but I'll give you a minute to think about how to ask it.
Thank you. Which medical specialty has the most exposure? Well, let me conclude it this way. In terms of the presentation of dog bite wounds in the emergency room, are emergency room physicians trained to recognize and treat dog-inflicted wounds on humans?
Yes. It's a common presentation in the emergency department.
Describe the difference between, well, do you know the difference between a civilian dog bite and a canine dog bite?
I believe I do.
Describe it.
That's a bad question.
Civilian?
And a canine dog bite.
Well,
Aren't all dog bites canine dog bites?
Canine
A
dog
person
bites
versus a dog?
That's what I think he
inflicted by
meant.
trained canine dogs tend to be quite devastating.
Okay, she's talking about police dogs
Puncture wounds
versus
with tearing
versus.
Well, she did
home
talk
dogs.
earlier about, they're military dogs or
Dogs,
police
right.
type dogs.
That's what I think that question
But his
is.
question was horrible. And I think he's going to get to here sooner than later the difference between a human bite and a dog bite.
lacerations, very big wounds causing injury to muscle, connective tissue underneath, even blood vessels at times. They oftentimes require admission to the hospital and extensive intravenous antibiotics. As opposed to the canine, the civilian, what I call the civilian dog bites, which typically are just scratches or, I shouldn't say scratches, abrasions or small puncture wounds, and require maybe a little bit of irrigation and a tetanus shot and outpatient treatment.
Dr. Russell,
Can we stop here, Michael, a second?
Sure.
Yeah, because there are cases that people bring federal civil rights lawsuits when you have a police dog attack somebody and there's been charges. And we've all seen those old civil rights pictures. Remember the German shepherds lined up, where they said that was unusual, a cruel, unusual punishment. It was a violation of civil rights because a police officer, law enforcement has released his dog, his or her dog, who has been trained, with those, they're held back by the collars and all. to really attack somebody. And I think that's what she's talking about is a difference here.
Yeah, I think that's what he's getting at. He's just been kind of clunky in doing it. What do we think about him so far, Alessi? We like him. He has an interesting affect, I think. He's a very well-respected attorney, comes from a New York firm, but not warm and fuzzy, I'll tell you that. So, again.
Sometimes the presentation of forensic evidence, you're not necessarily warm and fuzzy until you get in front of the jury. And then
of course,
you'd be surprised how we all can change to being
well, I can't wait to see, because this is, and I know he's making his first impression with the judge, so right. I get that.
Patient with my questions. Do you need a break for any reason, subject to the court's permission?
So I was going to go just a little bit further, if we could, like 15 minutes.
Sue Pickett likes
I
him.
can't see Dr. Russell from where
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Can you go 15 more minutes?
I could.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You have no idea what's coming. 15 minutes. It's nothing.
Let's move on to the topic of dental features of dogs. Do you have knowledge of the dental features of dogs?
Yes.
Describe that knowledge.
Well, I have knowledge of the numbers and configuration of the teeth, the shape of the jaw.
And can you describe generally
that knowledge?
Generally, yes. So the shape varies depending on the breed, but generally there are 42 teeth.
Okay, pop quiz. 42 teeth in a dog. And then she goes on to say 22 top and 22 bottom. That's all right. How many teeth in a human, including wisdom?
I don't remember.
32. Okay, moving on.
But that includes the wisdom?
Wisdom,
and,
including wisdom.
Certain number on the top.
Teeth are numbered, by the way.
This,
a number.
A certain number down below. 20 on top, 22 below.
Oh, 20 and 22, I misheard her.
Is that knowledge sourced from your medical education training? Or does it source from the literature, or both?
Both.
Now let's go to an overview of dog-inflicted injuries.
Pretty Eyes also knows her teeth.
Specifically, can you give an overview of the specific type of dog-inflicted injuries on humans?
Yes, they can range from the very minor, which are abrasions and contusions or bruises, to very large gaping lacerations and amputations and avulsions and just about everything in between.
What do you mean by an avulsion?
An avulsion is where a piece of tissue is actually torn away. By tissue, generally I mean the skin, and it's torn away from where it's supposed to be. But yet, a little part of it may still be intact. So it's not completely amputated, it's just a portion of it is torn away.
Yeah, that's what I had, an avulsion right there.
Are there ever teeth from a dog that are the cause of those types of injuries you just described?
Yes.
Are the nails of a dog ever the source of the type of injuries you just described?
The nails are sources of abrasions.
Are the claw marks the source of any type of injury from a dog? Or are the claw marks of a dog the source of any type of the injuries you just described?
Yes, abrasions.
Let's go to the types of dog bite injuries.
Okay, we're going to pause it there because they're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and get her ultimate opinion. I want to show you something, though, as they took a break, which was coming up in just a couple of minutes here. And again, these are all bits of testimony that are very general in nature, not specifically about John O'Keefe. So they take the break.
My best estimate, Your Honor, is 40 to 45 minutes.
Okay,
yeah, right.
So you say this is a good place to stop?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay, then we'll stop. So
Thank
we'll
you.
take a 20-minute break and be back out here at 11:30.
So I just like to watch the dynamic in the courtroom.
Look, remember, he's also making a record this is important for two reasons. This is the first time the court is seeing and hearing him. We are all watching, right? Because this case is going to national attention. So this testimony is putting his defense, you are needed, oh boy, his defense in front of us all again, right? Or her defense, I should say. And additionally, he's making a record should Judge Cannoni decide to deny this. So he's clear, he's concise, he speaks slow, with something that you may want to change up in front of a jury. But right now, there's two important things that he's trying to do.
And the judge at one point acknowledges that, saying, you know, with the timing and scheduling, if somebody is going to appeal this, you know, so she knows. But look at the, are we at a cocktail party? I mean, it's like, you know, oh, hey, I haven't seen you since the mistrial in July. It just seems way friendly. And they're welcoming Alessi into the fold. I just found it to be a very interesting dynamic. And if you tried this in the Daniel Penny courtroom, you'd be in jail. I mean, there's none of this going on.
If you tried this in a federal courtroom, you'd be in jail.
So there's Wolverine, probably sitting on his hands because, you know, he's a very active dude.
Yeah, but he's controlling. I know Alan
You think
Jackson.
he's pulling the Alessi strings?
Alan Jackson, I said that to you when we were on Law and Crime. You know, I'm probably the only attorney to try a case against him that's been commenting on this, even though there's a gazillion blogs out there commenting on it. He's a very good attorney. He knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what he wants. And you know, I think both of us had great respect for each other. I saw when I came back for the second trial when I was just in the spectator area in California. But he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he has a lot of fans, that's for sure. And he proves himself every day we see him in court. So what we're going to do now is you know, and I'll ask you how you like to do this with an expert. You know, there's a lot of ways you can do this to get their opinion. I like asking for the ultimate opinion right out of the box.
I did too.
And then, okay, let's get to the basis for that opinion. I don't like to bury the lead, you know. I want the jury to hear, bam, this is my expert. She's been qualified. Here's her ultimate opinion, and then we're going to just dig into it. Some don't do it that way. This one, there was so much foundation laid that it took a while to get to this point. But let me see if I can cue it up here properly, because he asks the question that, you know, that is really the $1 million question. So,
what is it that I'm looking at, and what is it that I'm going to be treating? And I need to make sure that I'm not treating the wrong condition.
Let's now go to the topic of the materials you have considered in this matter. Without stating what it is, have you been able to form an opinion as to the source and nature of the wounds that were inflicted on the decedent?
Yes.
What materials did you consider in forming your opinion?
Well, I looked at the appearance of the wounds, and with my training and experience, I took that all into consideration. I did do a differential diagnosis on what those wounds could be. You know, could they be caused by an assault? Could they be caused by a motor vehicle? Could it be caused by, you know, self-inflicted? I went through that whole differential before I came to my conclusion.
Did you look at any photographs of the decedent from Good Samaritan Hospital?
Yes.
Did you look at the autopsy report of the decedent?
Yes.
Did you look at the grand jury testimony of Dr. Scordi Bello?
Yes.
Did you look at the trial testimony of Dr. Scordi Bello?
Yes.
Did you look at autopsy photographs of the decedent?
Yes.
Did you look at the photographs that were taken by the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab?
Yes.
Did those photos include a sweatshirt or what's sometimes referred to a hoodie?
Yes.
And were there photos of that sweatshirt or hoodie that you looked at?
Yes.
Did you look at a letter from Tracy Kennedy with the town of Canton with a report regarding a German Shepherd owned by Brian Albert?
Yes.
Did you look at the photographs of dog bites and a certificate of vaccination for Brian Albert's former German Shepherd dog?
Yes.
Did you look at the forensic DNA testing report by the UC Davis Veterinary Genetics Laboratory?
Yes.
Did you look at the UC Davis Veterinary Genetic Laboratory case report?
Yes.
Did you look at a report from a Paul Mikowski, a licensed private investigator, on interviews regarding Brian Albert's German Shepherd dog?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion with regard to the nature and source of the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
Those wounds were inflicted by a dog attack.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
How did you form that opinion?
Well, I utilized my many years of training experience with wounds in general and dog bites in specific, and went over the materials quite a few times. And with that, and plus did read up on some literature that I had read in the past and reread again. And that's how I came to the opinion.
Now, to get a little bit more specific, did you invoke your pattern recognition methodology in coming to that opinion?
Objection.
You have to ask it differently.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you employ a methodology in coming to that opinion?
Yes.
What was the methodology, or one of the methodologies, in coming to that opinion?
Well, right away, it was apparent that there was a pattern. So I used my the pattern recognition methodology, plus my many years of training experience to come to this conclusion.
And with regard to the pattern recognition, do you have a level of certainty with regard to the pattern that you have recognized in the decedent's wounds on his right arm?
Yes.
What is that level of certainty or certitude?
Those wounds are highly characteristic of a dog attack.
How frequent in your experience do you find in wound care that a wound pattern is highly characteristic of a certain source?
I object to a percentage type question.
Can you answer that question, Doctor?
He's trying to
not
get
sure
an
I
error rate
understand it,
because he
so
can't
I
really
asked
get
you
an
to-
error rate because
Thank
there are no error rate studies in pattern recognition of dog wounds, and that's where this is going.
When you use the phrase highly characteristic, what do you mean by that phrase?
Well, it's very high. If I were to give a percentage,
Please continue.
I would say almost pathognomonic, 90, very high 90s.
Now,
So
let's
that's
go
your
to
level of
differential
certainty. That's
diagnosis.
not understand. Michael, just stop it a second. In law, and I know this is a very detailed thing, that's her level of certainty. That is not an error rate. But when she answered the question of, do you have this opinion within a reasonable degree of scientific or medical certainty, whatever it is, most people, most experts do not know what that means. In New Jersey, for instance, that level of certainty only requires the expert witness to be 50.0001% certain about their opinion. It doesn't require any great thing. Every state is different. And she's saying that she may not know what it is in Massachusetts, but she's saying that her level of certainty is 98%. but that's also different than the error rate in Daubert, because I know all of you who watch our trial watchers, you know this stuff, you eat this stuff up.
Yeah, and it's also critical because when we get to cross-examination, I can't believe what time it is already. We get to cross-examination, we'll see that the attack on her is that she was a little squishy in her grand jury testimony and in the first trial. And then there was a more recent report, actually as recently as 2 days ago, 3 days ago on the 10th, that qualified some of the things she said. So that's one of the reasons the prosecution is saying, get her out of here. She's not firm on her opinions, and she has changed them or reinforced them because she thought it would help the defense. And she denies that. Let's move to, she does talk about the wound specifically, and I think we've got some of the, I've got the separate photos if we don't see them in the, there we go. Let's listen to some of this.
Well, they're linear, meaning they look like a line, or they're not round, or these are at least are not round. And so these, do you want me my interpretation, or do you want me to just describe?
To stick with those, and then what I'd like you to do is you've described them, you said linear, etc. Have you completed your description of them before you get to how you reached a conclusion as to the source of that area you just did a circle around? Have you completed your description of them?
Yes, I've completed my description. How I came to the conclusion involves all of them.
Okay, so now let's then move, before you get to a conclusion, let's move to, in whatever manner you would like, the next wounds and how you assess those.
Okay. So, and by the way, on this first set, there's a very, very faint linear abrasion between these two prominent linear abrasions. Okay. Proceeding down the arm towards the elbow, we have another set of wounds, which consist of parallel abrasions. This time it looks like there's two in the more anterior portion of that lateral aspect of the arm, and then another linear abrasion down below here, as well as a superficial punctate or round tiny lesion below
What do you
it.
mean by punctate?
Punctate, I mean small and round.
I don't know whose pool feed here, but
And
they're blowing
there may
it.
be another
Why are we not
punctate
seeing the
lesion right
arm?
there.
Why she's pointing to, right?
That's this
Yeah.
group. Proceeding down the arm, there is this irregular group here of multiple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 linear abrasions at least, and then 2, possibly 3 punctate wounds below them.
Those are
And,
punctures, I
this
believe.
is right over
Yes.
the elbow
Right,
area.
it's tiny puncture.
And there might,
Dr.
yes.
Gorsuch, you mentioned irregular with regard to some of those wounds. Why do you describe them as irregular? And is there any significance to them being irregular? Don't go to your conclusion yet. Just you use the term irregular, and I want to make sure the record's clear what you mean by that.
Okay. Well, so a few of these individual wounds have some linear or line-like component, but then as you proceed further down the arm and just below the elbow, there's a couple of wounds here that do not look like a line. So that's what I meant by irregular. So that's this pattern here in total, around the elbow. Then further down the arm, there's 2 punctate wounds again, right here.
Go slow and say this is punctate wound number 1, this is punctate wound number 2 with circling the list.
Okay, here's one. Punctate
It's
wound
so
number
nice
1,
to actually see them.
and here is number
Right.
2.
Right.
I don't know why they stopped showing that.
Well, because I think it's the arm of somebody who's
Very
dead, but
good
we've
question.
all seen
Because there
them
was movement.
100
So what?
times.
There was
because
movement
that's-
of the,
it's
either the
an arm.
dog or the, the inflicting teeth.
No one
Either
is
the
being
dog or
disrespectful.
the victim. There was
Yeah, I think, and I want to show you this too. So she goes on about every wound that we can't see, unfortunately. Then there was an interesting moment as they're going through some exhibits. I'll just let it play out for you, and then we can talk about what we almost got to see, but then didn't get to see. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Check this out.
the autopsy. The medical examiner commented in the report that
Hold on, I'm sorry. Let's do this. Yeah, you see them huddling. Oh, you hear this white noise? That's because they're having a conversation. And it's because they put up an exhibit that apparently was not supposed to be up.
Oh boy. It always happens, doesn't it?
And the jury wasn't there, obviously, so it's less impactful. But here you see one of the other attorneys there next to Alan Jackson plugging in the laptop.
Exhibit 4.
yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge says yes.
Dr. Russell, did you?
You know what? Actually, take it down for just a
Oh,
minute.
that's right. Yes, I'm sorry.
Take it down, Ms. Gilman. Thank you. I'll see counsel at side.
So what I can assume, you give me your thoughts, LKB, what I can assume is that it was an autopsy photo that was just more than they needed, showed more than necessary for the purposes they were going to use it. And there were two of them, I guess, because they then gave them in hard copy to the witness who kept them like on her lap so nobody could see them. What do you think?
That's probably what it was. And it probably wasn't shown at the original trial openly.
It wasn't.
either.
It was not.
That's what it was. Yeah. And,
So the
and,
gallery saw it this time for a
gallery
few
saw it.
seconds. They saw it.
And that's a good reason then that whoever the camera person was not showing the screen.
Yes.
Because that would be, that you don't want to see. Although, there's nothing disrespectful about doing an autopsy. What's disrespectful is if people make fun of it, take it out, show it on the internet, all over and over and over, and make nasty comments or snarky comments or any comments, So that's the judge doesn't want that.
Yeah, and the camera person, I'm always amused at how or fascinated how active Karen Reed is, during these white noise moments. I mean, she's in there mixing it up, and I don't know if giving direction but she's one of the team. I'll tell you that. A lot of defendants are not so active. So let's just zoom to the end of this so we can get back into some cross-examination, which is clearly the point of this hearing, and I will spoil
Right,
it
because this
by
was a
telling you,
hearing.
they
right.
didn't get done. They didn't get
Did
done.
not get done. But both
They did not
sides
get
wanted
done.
this hearing, right?
No. The defense said, no, we're good. Why, we're good. And that was their opposition brief that, ultimately didn't carry the
Didn't see
day.
anything like that.
Who's doing the cross, Michael?
It is the new guy,
Brennan,
Brennan. Mm-hmm.
who's special counsel. He's
He is a
civil
special
attorney.
prosecutor getting paid maximum $75,000.
Unlike Nathan Wade from Bonnie
Yeah,
Wade.
he's getting underpaid. He should go to Fulton County. Yeah, and if it goes past June, they have to renegotiate his deal. I mean, I've decided when a movie is made about this, heaven forbid, Amy Schumer, right there. Amy Schumer will be playing the judge.
Assessment of the nature and cause of the decedent.
Another bad question.
Well, how have you assessed Exhibit 8 before today?
Before today,
Well, have you assessed Exhibit 8 at all?
I've seen that picture.
Do you have an assessment as to what you observe in Exhibit 8? Do you have an observation about Exhibit 8?
Yes,
What is your observation?
they appear to be blue jeans. They appear to have certain stains labeled with a small ruler, and I don't know the nature of the stains.
And as
Is
you
there
remember, the pants weren't
anything
torn.
with regard to Exhibit 8 that you believe is pertinent to assessing whether or not any injury from Mr. O'Keefe was sourced from a dog attack?
I can't tell.
Can we go to Exhibit 9, please? And if we could just, I'm sorry, Ms. Garrett, if we go back to 8. Is there anything in the autopsy report of the medical examiner of the Commonwealth that speaks to Exhibit 8 in terms of the assessment that the medical examiner made in the autopsy report?
I don't recall seeing anything in the autopsy report regarding that, but if you can direct me to a certain area.
Oh,
I can look at it.
that's fine.
Okay.
So, thank you, Ms. Goodwin. We could go to Exhibit 9 with the court's permission?
Yes.
Thank you.
Remember, DNA was a
recognize
big
Exhibit
issue.
9.
Yes.
How do you recognize
Well, I've seen that
or lack
image
of
many
DNA.
times.
it? And what is that image?
Well, it appears to be a hoodie, sweatshirt, hoodie-style sweatshirt. It's got multiple dark stains on the sweatshirt. There appears to be a large tear through the middle of it, which I believe was probably caused in the emergency room, because that's what.
Why do you believe it was probably caused in the emergency room?
Because I've made those kinds of cuts in clothing before, having to get access to a patient.
Right. So, what is the
So that's
purpose of
commonplace.
making a cut like that on a piece of clothing, given your understanding of the nature of the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe?
He was in a very emergent situation, and they needed to get access to his body right away.
Okay.
So that's why they didn't have time to undress him. They just did the fastest thing, which is cut the clothing.
Do you have any other observations with regard to Exhibit 9 pertinent to your analysis?
Yes, there are multiple areas, particularly in the right sleeve.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Your Honor, may she use the laser pointer?
Yes.
Thank you.
There are multiple areas, particularly in the right sleeve,
I don't think your laser has yet hit. There we go.
that are labeled with triangular white signs, which are pointing to individual holes in the sleeve. And there were 11 of them that I saw on the sleeve, and there are 2 others on the chest area.
Have you, in your experience, assessed changes to clothing in determining the nature and source of those types of changes to clothing?
Yes. So
Describe how.
Clothing is important sometimes to determine more information about how a wound was inflicted. So, for instance, it's used in determining gunshot wound, entry, exit, direction, etc. I've used it in stab wound cases where, again, determining where the stab wounds were and if they were offensive or defensive type wounds. So, yes, and in this case, they have significance.
And what is the significance in this case?
Well, these wounds are primarily on the right arm, which corresponds to the injuries that were on the decedent, the right arm. And furthermore, most of those wounds, when you enlarge that photograph, are small puncture wounds, very small. And what's interesting about them, to me, is that in many of those wounds, the fibers, the clothing fibers, are actually headed out of the wound.
And what significance, if any, is it to you that the direction of the fibers are coming, as you described it, outside?
Well, it's very significant because, in training, we learned that we had to look at direction, for instance, of tissue and fibers to determine if a gunshot wound was an entry or an exit. Now, gunshot wounds, they only do one of those two things through the same hole. They either enter or exit. But in this case, we have fibers exiting the wound, which means that the offending object exited the wound. So the teeth exited the wound.
Objection.
Sustained.
You mentioned the word offending object. How did you, without stating what it is, did you eventually determine what was the, as you call it, offending object? Do you mean offending object, what caused this change to the clothing? Is that what you mean when you say offending object?
Yes.
Okay. How did you assess what was the offending object that caused the change to the clothing as depicted in that right arm of the hoodie?
They've got to the form of the question.
Sustained. Just ask it differently, please.
Did you
There's a million ways to get your question asked. We learned this from here.
cause of those changes to the hoodie sweatshirt?
Yes.
What was that methodology that you deployed?
So I looked at the location of those holes. I looked at the location of the wounds on the decedent. And although they're not exactly in the same location because clothing moves, they are generally in the same location of the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay, with that, we're going to recess. I know that this is taking longer than you anticipated.
I think it's taking longer than anybody anticipated. So we're gonna. You can hang around, right, LKB? You can stick around for a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
'cause I
Are
wanna
our
get-
viewers, are you sticking around? Well, if
Yeah,
you're
well, that's a
sticking
better
around, we're sticking
question.
around.
That's a better question. Because the cross, which is a little more animated, as you might imagine, because he gets right at her right away, and he only gets like 45 minutes in.
Yeah, but let's, before we go to the cross, very interesting, that because I know he's probably good. I haven't seen the cross. This will be the first for me. I haven't taken a look at it, but I want to get into this famous case and set the stage for why a forensic pathologist should know the difference between different things that caused death, right? And there was a famous case in Canada that had a huge impact about forensic pathologists all over the place. And there's a man named Charles Smith. And I'm familiar with it because we were doing a lot with at the time in a forensic conference about that. And it's wrongful conviction, right? He caused a lot of wrongful convictions up in Canada. He was considered the god when he testified. But the problem is that on one particular case, he actually said that a baby had been either stabbed to death by a knife or by scissors, and and the mother went to jail, right? Because why? Well, guess what? You guys all know the answer. What's coming? He couldn't differentiate. He didn't know the difference between a knife and a scissor wound, or at least chose not to, and a dog wound, a dog bite. And it turns out the child had been killed by a dog bites. And the mom went to jail until she was later exonerated in a whole pattern of cases that Dr. Smith testified to, because what he said put a lot of innocent people in jail. You can look it up, and it's the Gouge Commission in Canada that went through all his cases, but that was one of the famous cases involving dog bites and a forensic pathologist who could not identify the difference between a dog bite and a scissors, or at least chose not to.
Yes. So, and I wanted to show this because this is the picture she was talking about that we did not get to see. This is the hoodie, and you can see the triangle evidence type marks there. She said there are 11. I'll take her word for it. I think some of them are missing from this photo, but those were all the puncture wounds or tears that matched, in her opinion, up with the injuries on John O'Keefe's arm. So, again, I wish we were able to see more of these in context with her testimony, but So be it. Life is not perfect. Okay, so let's go into the cross-examination now. Stand by as I find that little guy. And again, this is the guy new to the team. This is Mr. Hank Brennan. And he is, again, a special prosecutor appointed at a rate of $75K max through June. He'll redo his deal if it doesn't. I'm going to zoom past this. This is right after they had the little break. See, there's the picture after she's been talking all about it. And I'll just let these sink in for a little bit here. You can see these are, she's talking about the material being in and out and affected by the bite.
I believe this was inflicted by a dog tooth, a canine tooth. And again, the fibers are pointing outward.
How big is that assessment? How did you choose that?
Well, it's generally small and round. So, and the canine teeth are the teeth that stick out the most when a dog bites. So this is consistent with a canine bite.
Okay, so that's, she's wrapping it up. And so now we have Mr. Brennan about to take the stand. This I thought was odd. I just got to, that was somebody else totally unrelated, and it was to really talk about how a wound looks when it's healing. But it seems to me kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I'm not quite sure why they decided to throw that in there. I'm not getting it. Okay, he's almost done. Sit down, sir.
And then I ultimately decide whether it's consistent.
Oh, this is important. Let me re-rack that just a moment here, because this gets to the ultimate. There was an objection. There was an objection basically about something that was being offered as an opinion, and trying to contrast that with what she'd said at trial. And that's when the judge said.
And I guess it's a matter of argument, right? I can be told with the previous, it was attached to the motion that's before me today, the transcript was attached. I can see what her previous opinion is, and then I ultimately decide whether it's consistent or not. Right?
And why, because why? Because she can change her opinion and still be satisfied with Daubert. I mean, she can have.
Of course, that's just subject for cross-exam, and you make her look stupid.
Right.
Yeah. So again, it goes to the weight of the testimony, not the admissibility. But the judge is making it sound like she can say, "Well, maybe I decide she doesn't get to testify."
Oh, really?
That's what it sounds like.
By the way, Beth Christina said that was a picture of a woman's hand that Chloe, the dog, bit. I hadn't seen that before. Yes, Chloe put a woman in the hospital, didn't she? Chloe disappeared. Then Chloe
was unhomed or rehomed or whatever. Rehomed.
Okay, so if you've got a site, I'm happy to look at the page to see if I might be able to figure out where you're going, or you can come to sidebar.
Can I come to sidebar?
Sure.
Oh, let's come to sidebar. Okay, so they're gonna have their fun at sidebar.
Is that a Stanley Cup or is that a Yeti? That is the Stanley Cup. It's got to go back. It's got to be. It's been recalled on the bench. Okay.
Hold on here. Oh, it's gone black on me. See, they're just having a party. I mean, it's I guess if you've avoided guilt one time around. I mean, look at this. It's just a party.
Everybody's smiling.
Sorry. I know. Sorry, I get carried away with that stuff. Stand by. He does wrap up. Look at how happy does he look? There's Lally for those who missed it the first time. This guy he's reliving it, unfortunately.
Well, he got, second chair because Mr. Brennan was brought in, right? After all the publicity, after the.
He could have stepped away. He could have just said, I had enough of this crap. But I give him credit for sticking in there because he's certainly going to be valuable to the team. Okay, there's Mr. Brennan. He's getting all poised, ready to roll, queued up. Got his attack face on.
Good afternoon, Dr. Russell.
Good afternoon.
My name's Hank Brennan. We haven't had the pleasure of meeting before.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brennan.
I'm going to ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
Earpiece back
Yes.
in.
Thank you. You shared with us that you have an extensive history of experience in the emergency room.
Yes.
And in the emergency room, you see all types of injuries, don't you?
Yes.
You see physical injuries, yes?
Yes.
Emotional injuries,
Yes.
people who overdose, perhaps they're drunk on drugs,
Yes,
alcohol.
yes.
So you cover a wide array of different types of treatments.
Yes,
Now, you must have seen a number of broken bones when you were in the emergency room caring for different patients, correct?
thousands.
Arms, legs, toes.
Yes.
In light of your extensive experience in the emergency room, and looking at all of these broken bones, that doesn't make you an expert in orthopedics, does it?
Emergency orthopedics, yes.
Oh. Have you ever been qualified as an expert in orthopedics?
No, I've
Isn't
never.
orthopedics a specialty in medicine where there is specific training?
Yes,
And people who become orthopedics or orthopedic surgeons, they go through rigorous education specifically to be an orthopedic, right?
well, orthopedics involves more than just setting fractures or diagnosing fractures. Orthopedics involves things like bone tumors, bone cancers, a lot of other parts of
This is
orthopedics,
where, as a
not just
cross-examiner,
trauma.
he is not controlling the witness because there are certain medical specialties, and then people are what they call board certified. So you don't want somebody who's a proctologist coming in and giving an opinion, for instance, on, shall we say, breast cancer, right? Or something like that. So that's, or even if, proctologists coming in and giving an opinion as a forensic pathologist because they're not board certified as an expert. So he's already lost control of her.
Yeah, and she's helpful. I mean, she really comes off as helpful, not like she's trying to cause problems. I love this shot because, as you mentioned, in some courts you can't show the gallery. I just think this is so great to be able to see who's paying attention, who's there. Again, we see Karen Reed's dad, who's now right behind counsel. We should mention, I know you know the answer to this. He's generally now a defense attorney, or has been a defense attorney in some major cases. You remember who he represented?
Do I
Whitey
remember-
Bulger.
Oh, yeah.
He represented Whitey Bulger as
right.
a defense attorney, and so
Right.
the special prosecutor certainly has experience with some major
And for
cases.
those that don't know, Whitey Bulger was a mob guy who went missing for a number of decades. It turns out he was also an FBI informant at the time, right? And later he was arrested in Boston, brought back, was tried, and later died in prison when he was stabbed by another prison inmate in the Florida prison, Florida federal prison. But
Yeah.
it's a thumbnail, Whitey Bulger.
An expert in emergency orthopedics, I believe.
So you have decided that you are an expert in orthopedics?
Emergency orthopedics.
Emergency orthopedics, is that a specialty that you get a fellowship in, or somehow you are
No, it's not. I can answer that for you.
deemed an expert in any way?
It's not a specialty that has a fellowship that I'm aware of.
I see. So you are proclaiming that you yourself think that you're a emergency room orthopedic.
I have expertise in emergency orthopedics, yes.
Are you an expert in orthopedics?
The whole field of orthopedics, no.
And you don't have any specialized degrees in orthopedics, do you?
No.
You would agree that somebody who's gone through the rigorous requirements of being an orthopedic and qualified, they'd have much more experience than that than you. True?
In general orthopedics, yes. I have a lot of experience in orthopedic trauma related to emergencies.
Have you ever been in any court where you've ever been qualified as an expert in orthopedics?
It was never an issue.
But I'm asking you, have you ever been in any court, state, federal, this country, any other country?
He's trying to gain control
where you've been
back.
Qualified as an expert in orthopedics?
No.
And he's also trying to discredit her on an unrelated issue. This is not a case that has anything to do with orthopedic injuries.
Right.
So he just wants to make it look like, oh, so you're not qualified then.
Anybody other than yourself ordained you as an expert in orthopedics?
I haven't ordained myself as an expert in orthopedics. I have a lot of knowledge and expertise in emergency orthopedics.
Has any authority ever recognized you and qualified you as an expert in orthopedics?
No.
Just you.
I haven't declared myself an expert in orthopedics. I have expertise.
You've seen a lot of car accidents you shared with us
Yes.
as a police officer
Yes.
in the emergency room.
Yes.
Perhaps when You're at the ME expert in accident reconstruction.
Reconstruction? No.
And when you see the different people that come in with overdoses, whether it's alcohol or drugs, you treat them, don't you?
Yes.
But you're not an expert toxicologist, are you?
I'm not a toxicologist, no. But toxicology is a part of emergency medicine. So we have training in orthopedic, in toxicology, but no, I am not an expert in toxicology.
I'm not suggesting you're unfamiliar with it or you haven't had experience or some training. I'm asking you if you think you're an expert.
Correct.
In fact, you know very little about DNA, don't you?
I would say that's pretty reasonable, yes.
Well, that's what you said.
Yes.
Oh. You mentioned that you are generalizing or approximating the number of dog bite cases you've attended to in the emergency room relative to civilian dogs or domestic dogs. Is that right?
Yes.
And you've suggested that you probably treated about one dog a week over a period of 27 years. Yes?
Yes.
Which is 1,000 weeks in your estimation.
Yes.
You worked for some of the most busiest ERs. Was there a lot of patients every day that you treated?
Yes.
On average, how many patients would you treat in the ER over those 27 years on a daily basis?
Daily, I would think about 30.
So if you're treating 30 patients a day over a course of a week, and you consider that in the context of 1,000 weeks, the amount of dog bite cases that you treated in the ER is about half of 1%. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
No, you lost me on that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, if you had one case a day, 100 a week, that would be 1% of your cases.
Oh, it could, yes, yes, but it's the number of cases, not the percentage that was asked of me.
I'm just asking you a question.
Okay. I just want to clarify that.
And so you said how many? 25, 30 a day?
Patients, yes.
So that's less than 1% of the cases that you treated in the ER relative to dog bites.
Okay, that's reasonable, and that's average, actually.
Now, when you treated cases of dog bites in the ER, you said that you would sometimes have the reporter, the person injured or somebody with them, tell you it was a dog bite.
Yes.
Yes? And sometimes you had communication difficulties, or there was a reason why they couldn't share it with you.
Yes.
And then you suggested that's how you came to this pattern recognition skill, is that you would have to determine the injury with no help from the reporter.
I was always interested in dog bites, and yes, there were a few occasions when I had to use those skills in order to determine what kind of an animal it was.
Let's talk about those few occasions. Why don't you share with us a story where you met a patient that you can recall, where you had no idea what the injury may have been because there was no ability to communicate, and tell us about how you determined it was a dog.
Well, thinking about a specific case, I can think of cases where I determined it wasn't a dog bite, and it was something else based on the pattern of the bite. And am I not answering your question?
I'm not looking for cases where you couldn't determine if a dog bite. I want you to share some of this wealth of experience you have in dog bites, and share with us, if you will, one of the cases where there was no information that it was a dog bite for whatever reason, and then you, based on your pattern recognition skills, determined that it was a dog bite. I want you to walk through an actual case that you can recall you had with this scenario you presented now.
I can't give you a specific case because, again, in the overall scheme of emergency medicine and the frequency that dog bites are to other cases, it's just not a case that I would remember that kind of specific.
Michael, can we stop it right there? What he's trying to get to is that most people come into the emergency room and say, I've been bitten by a dog. I've been scratched by a cat. Like my cat bit me, and all. So if they're coming into the emergency room, they're not dead. So that's where I think he's trying to go, but he's not going there very effectively, in my opinion, because it's as simple as that. People in the emergency room, did they come to you and tell you they've been bitten by a dog? Yeah. Was any of them in the emergency room dead? No. Thank you very much.
And it was kind of headed off at the pass on direct when there was a conversation about, are there times where you've had to figure it out when the person can't give you input clearly if they're dead?
Right.
She mentioned language barriers or something else. But yeah, I mean, his whole tone is, I don't believe you. I don't trust you. Your opinion is not based on anything that we should trust. Therefore,
Right.
You're not going to be helpful to a jury. I mean, that's what he's got to sell the court on. And he gets to a point where, and I think it's coming up here pretty quick, he really starts attacking the changes in her testimony. And we'll find that it wasn't so much a change as it was a difference in degree. And one of the key questions is, at some point during the trial, she was asked if the bites were consistent with a dog or other animal. Okay, and he really pounds away on that, because that's, arguably very different than, I'm certain it was a dog, which is what we're hearing now. I wish he'd get on mic, though.
Right, you can't hear him.
Past experiences and presenting himself as an expert in pattern recognition. And it's interesting that when I'm asking for these details, it's important this general.
Objection, Your Honor. Argument.
Yeah, so, counsel, that's okay. In Massachusetts, typically we don't give the reason for objections from the floor. Your objection sustained. No commentary, Mr. Brennan.
You shared with the court that you wrote a few articles that had to do with.
Co-authored, yes.
Can I ask you some questions about those?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, the first one I want to talk about is law enforcement canine dog bites. Do you remember that article?
Yes.
And that had to do with what you refer to as law enforcement dogs or canines.
Yes.
In that article, you talk specifically about a technique that you believe law enforcement or canine dogs utilize, which is bite and hold.
Yes.
And what you have suggested is that the bite and hold technique is different than typically a domestic dog or a civilian dog.
Yes.
Because it's a trained learning for the dog, correct?
Yes.
There are certain injuries you would expect from a canine dog using a bite and hold technique.
Yes.
When you wrote this or co-authored this article, you didn't actually sit down with people who had wounds and compare the wounds to the dog that caused them, did you?
To the actual dog?
My two German
I
Shepherds
didn't,
that I
but,
mentioned before, I had a lot of German Shepherds, but the two specifically, Fido and Porta, were actually from Czechoslovakia, and they were trained police dogs overseas. And they never bit anyone, because a real trained police dog will only bite on command. And you can have them around kids or anything, because they're not going to do anything. It's the dangerous dog who can't be trained that bites. Now I have a standard poodle. He just looks pretty.
Yeah, our dog gets kept by a guy who trains those Czech. They're not called German Shepherds. They're like Brussels.
Malinois. They have the Malinois. Now they're using Belgian Malinois now in law enforcement.
Yeah, and those things cost a ton. They cost a fortune, and they come from the Czech Republic.
Right.
But yeah, they are smart dogs.
Okay, I didn't.
Just want to know if you did.
No.
Oh, and when you looked at these different cases, there was 700 cases. This was what you called or the authors called a retrospective analysis.
Correct.
That means you were looking back at old files.
Yes, but I participated in some of those files. We were just looking back at the data from those files. I participated in the care of some of those patients.
I understand.
Okay.
And so when you went through the files, you didn't have the opportunity then to follow up and speak to any of the participants or the injured victims, did you?
I spoke to many of the victims while I was treating them.
When you decided to write this article, did you go back and speak to anybody?
No.
There's no mention in this article about pattern recognition in any way. That's not what this article was about, was it?
No, that's not what the article's about.
It's about something entirely different than what you've suggested today as your pattern recognition skills. Yes?
That's correct. I recognized the patterns because I saw the wounds and I saw the injuries and I saw them over and over and over again. And I recognized those patterns throughout my career. And so it's just hard to unrecognize something.
I'm trying to ask you about the significance of your study because this is actually something that you published.
Yes.
And I'm trying to determine, or I want you to be able to discuss the relevancy of this article to what you're testifying today. So the question, the really narrow question I have for you is, in this study, it had nothing to do with trying to engage in pattern recognition.
The purpose, The purpose of the study was not to teach people pattern recognition. It was to alert them to the dangers of this different type of dog bite so that they weren't undertreating them. But in the process of seeing all those patients, I developed the pattern recognition.
Okay. And so there was another article, Managing Law Enforcement Canine Dog Bites in the Emergency Department.
Yes.
Now, that only comprised of 4 cases, yes?
It was a case description.
Of 4 cases.
Yes.
And do you know most studies usually include over 30 cases?
It's not a study.
I see. You reviewed types of injuries relative to civilian or domestic dogs, or just canine?
Those were canine dogs.
And again, your position is that the injuries by canine dogs, law enforcement dogs, are different in kind than domestic or civilian dogs.
In general, when they bite and hold, those injuries are different. Sometimes they don't get a complete bite.
And so this article didn't deal with civilian or domestic dogs. It dealt with only canine dogs.
That's correct.
Exclusively on the idea or the perspective of bite and hold injuries.
It was on the perspective of you need to learn how to treat these
Bite and hold injuries.
dog bite injuries.
Bite and hold.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Now, again, in this article, there was no effort to identify wounds or use pattern analysis. It was the treatment of bite and hold injuries from canines,
That's correct.
law enforcement canines. Yes?
Yes, yes.
And then you also shared with us, in addition to these 2 articles on law enforcement dogs and bite and hold injuries, that you did some revising, editing of a book for a Dr. Is it Vati?
I'm sorry, say again?
You said that you revised or edited a book of a
Dr.
friend.
Vail.
Dr. Vail, I'm sorry, Dr. Vail. And when you were asked about what actually you recall about the topics, you don't really remember the topics of that book, you just remembered you edited it?
No, I remember the topics of the book.
In the topics of the book, it was dealing with human teeth, wasn't it?
Yes, but in the article itself, if you read it, there's mention about dog dentition.
There's a mention of it.
Yes.
Tell us what that mention was.
Well, the mention is that the dog dentition looks different and dog bites look different because of the triangular shape of the dog's mouth versus a rounded shape of the human's mouth.
Well, when they talk about the shape of a dog's mouth, it's not really triangular, it's like an hourglass.
Well, but that was the quote. Those were the words that were used in the article, and it's relative triangular shape. It's as opposed to a round shape of a.
Yeah, I think that kind of nitpicky, back and forth doesn't help him at all.
Right.
Makes her look
Right.
better. What do people think of this guy? I'm seeing a couple of notes saying that I'm not all that impressed. I was expecting more.
Right.
Maybe it's the subject matter. I don't know. But what do you guys think of his work as he continues to cross? Remember, their goal is to keep her testimony out or to so seriously limit it that it's ineffective.
Human.
Well, in most studies, professional studies by experts, isn't it routinely referred to as an hourglass shape?
I haven't seen that at all.
Well, have you read books on dog bites?
I've read articles on dog bites.
Have you read books on dog bites?
No, I have read articles on dog bites.
Have you ever read this book? Do you
Here it comes.
recognize this as an authority?
No.
So for the record, you need to say what you just showed the
I'm
witness.
showing Dr. Russell a book called Dog Bites, a Multidisciplinary Perspective, edited by Daniel S. Mills. Never,
Is that it? I'm sorry. May I see it?
if the court would let me, of course. May I approach?
Yes.
I went to the library to find this book, but they didn't have a big dog bite section at the public library. Watch how she handles this. I think it's pretty good.
Thank you.
Risa thinks he's kind of whiny and snake-like.
It doesn't mention if any of these people have degrees of any.
Sorry, Your Honor, I don't believe a question's pending.
sorry, Mr. Alessi, I couldn't hear you.
Thank you. I don't believe a question
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
pending for the witness.
Okay, are you moving? No, it's been a long day. Wait for a question, please, okay?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
You done reviewing the book?
Yes.
Well, that's tough. Disney nerd saying he annoys her almost as much as Lally. That's
Right.
woof.
You've, through your testimony, attempted to or suggested there's a distinction between canine law enforcement wounds and that of domestic.
Yes.
But domestic dogs can cut the skin,
Correct.
cause serious injury,
Yes,
deep wounds.
they can.
It's not just that domestic dogs just nip around the corners. They can bite.
They can.
They can attack.
Yes.
They can kill.
Yes.
You've seen it firsthand.
Yes. Oh, I didn't witness the attack, no.
Do you doubt that it was a canine attack?
No, I didn't witness the attack
I know.
myself.
Oh, I understand.
Firsthand is what you said.
Okay.
Got him.
You made a
She got him.
firsthand
She did get
observation
him.
of a dog bite in the 1970s when you were at a training
Yes.
and one of the participants was bit.
Yes.
Now, you said you didn't remember the wound. Do you have any memory of looking at what happened after a dog actually bit somebody firsthand?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to allow its cross-examination on our based on our testimony.
Say again? Any question?
Should I repeat, Doctor?
Yes, please.
Do you have any memory of what you saw of when a dog actually bit somebody, your firsthand observation?
From 50 years ago? No.
Right. When people came in the emergency room, you didn't actually see the bites or how the mechanics of it happening. You're treating it after they come and ask you for aid.
That's correct.
Did you ever, in any of those emergency room experiences, go and see the dog?
No.
Did you ever have any other information about the dog, photographs, pictures, anything like that?
Well, I did have other information about the dog.
Oh, give me an example. Tell me.
Well, we had to fill out a dog bite report after a dog bite's requirement in Los Angeles County. So, although most doctors don't have the time to do it, I tried to comply with that rule. So I would question the victim, try to find out the address of the dog if they knew it. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But I tried to get as much information as I could.
Did you ever get any photographs?
No.
So it was just reporter information from the person who's coming for treatment or somebody that was assisting them?
Yes.
Okay. You provided a CV in this case, didn't you?
Yes.
In your CV, you list out some of your pertinent history and experience.
Yes.
Subsequent to your CV, you wrote a report and you signed it on the 9th of December, 2024.
Yes.
And it was provided to the Commonwealth, do you know, on December 10th, 2024, 2 days ago.
Yes.
There are a number of things that you offered in that report regarding your suggested experience that are just not in your CV. Isn't that fair to say?
That could be, yes. Of course, you can't put everything in the CV.
Well, you didn't say anything really about dog bite experience in your
You
CV.
testified. She testified.
In general, no.
Numbnuts.
Oops,
Sorry,
sorry.
I shouldn't say that. Okay, I take that
Did
word
you say,
back.
you use that legal term numbnuts? Is that what you said?
She testified at the first trial, and she was admitted as an expert. I'm sorry.
I
I'm sorry.
know. I got so
I
excited,
apologize
I
to you
jumped
all.
backwards
It's a
there.
Friday night and
They
it's
could,
late.
but they wouldn't
and, you
look
know.
like that. That series.
Now I lost my spot here. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I know she was basically saying, look, I had like
Suffice to
it was
say,
the brief CV. It's like a
you've
CV brief
never,
version.
Ever been qualified in a federal court to testify as a dog bite expert, have you?
No.
And other than this trial a year ago, have you ever been qualified to testify in any state court in the entire country as a dog bite expert?
No, the issue never came up.
That's not what I asked,
Okay.
though.
No.
No.
But in this court, she was qualified.
you wrote a
Hello,
report in this case?
hello,
So
hello,
what
everybody.
the
What do you think
prosecution
about
is
this?
asking the judge, good old Judge Bev, is to basically admit she made a mistake the first time by
Right.
finding her to be an expert. That ain't happening. Okay.
Yes.
Did anybody help you write this report?
I wrote the report. I had some help with some minor edits and rearranging, some paragraphs or whatever, but putting things in the right category.
Okay.
But no, I wrote the report.
Who helped you with your report?
Mr. Alessi?
So did you write a preliminary or draft report, send it for input,
Privileged.
and then change it?
Unless somebody else
No, I
wrote
didn't
it.
change it. I wrote the report, and I would have things in the wrong categories, for instance, like training experience or whatever.
Who said they were the wrong category?
Well, I think that was my conclusion, actually.
I see. And so how would you go through this editing process? How did that work on this report? Would you send it back and forth?
It got sent back and forth a couple times.
Okay. Now, this report you signed, right?
Did I sign it? Yes.
Nobody else signed it. You.
I wrote it.
Okay. And the reason why I asked if you had help, a lot of your statements and conclusions in this report are different than the testimony that you gave at both the voir dire hearing a year ago and at the trial. Is that fair to say?
I don't think it's fair to say.
Okay.
I think that
Tell me.
I don't think it's fair.
Okay.
I was convinced, if we would get into specifics, I was convinced of of my opinion back in the voir dire and in the trial. But I think I stated it wrong. They say in medicine that nothing is 100% in medicine. That's what we learn, when we go up through medical school and residency and whatever. And in my teachings, I always told people nothing is 100%. And that was the number that I was, that I thought I was being asked for. Basically, it was 100%. So that's why I stated my opinion the way I did. But anyways, as I went through material again, I was convinced back then, and I am still convinced right now, that these are caused by dog bites. And not only that, but dog attack.
If you were testifying honestly and earnestly before and you're using doctor speak, why would you need to change it for today?
Sophistry? Excuse me. Did he say the word sophistry, or did I hear it wrong?
I think you heard correctly.
Could you tell us what sophistry is, Michael? Brian?
I can't. I'd have to go to my dictionary to find out.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay,
what it is.
all of our viewers, we just have. Hey Google, okay. Hey Siri, could you give me a definition of the word sophistry? The use of fallacious arguments, especially with the intention of deceiving. Okay.
So lying. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, new word for me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought that maybe we'll just get a little action with Siri. Oh, by the way, you see that Justice Served TV?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, co-counsel Siri.
Honest, thorough opinion that you had before. Why did you have to change it?
I came up with this. I became clearer and clearer every single time that I looked at the pictures, and I just realized that I understated the last time, that I misunderstood the question that was asked of me, regarding my opinion, and so I felt that I had to be clearer.
Did anybody point out to you that it'd be more helpful to the defense case if you had a more assertive opinion?
No, absolutely not.
So when you went through these days and months since the trial, did you have any new information that you looked at that made you realize you underscored the confidence in your opinion?
No.
Okay. Because in your earlier testimony, it's quite different.
I know.
Like it bothers her that she had to make a
Gently,
change.
But I want to go through some of that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
There's only about
When you
5-6
first
minutes of this left.
testified, you had, how should I say this? You offered opinions that were less than certain about the genesis and cause of the wounds, didn't you?
I think it sounded like I was not certain. However, I was certain. I just didn't express it correctly.
Okay. When you first testified in the voir dire about some of these wounds, you were asked what kind of animal you thought caused the wounds, and you said, most likely a dog.
Correct.
Right. You didn't say beyond a reasonable degree of dog bite certainty, did you?
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the basis of the
The
question?
objection is, he said beyond a reasonable doubt, and that
No, no, he didn't say doubt. He said degree of medical
He did
certainty.
say degree.
he said
Dog, but he
beyond-
actually said
Right,
dog bite
beyond a
certainty.
reasonable degree of medical certainty.
No, he
So I
said
heard
dog
you
bite
didn't get to the-
certainty. I'm correcting the judge. He said beyond a reasonable degree of dog bite certainty.
He did. He used that legal term, dog bite certainty.
The judge has it wrong too. I don't think the
Well,
judge
she
is
was.
listening right there.
She was not
said-
really listening.
But sometimes
The
we hear.
certainty
We
you just heard
mishear,
beyond.
right?
Yeah, but that was a weird phrase. That kind of dog bite. Kind of made your ears perk up like a dog.
Reasonable and objected. So based on that, the objection's overruled.
Let me phrase to make it clear. You didn't say to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the bites you looked at were a dog.
I did in one of the okay, maybe in the next one. Okay, but yeah, if I wasn't asked about reasonable degree of medical certainty, I didn't.
Well.
I may not have expressed it.
The court herself asked you, do you know what kind of animal? And you said, yes, most likely a dog.
Well, that could be
that's-
interpreted as reasonable degree of medical
Well,
certainty.
yeah. Well, I mean,
if you're not
I
if you're
don't.
talking common language.
I don't think that question from the judge helps him. I think it reinforces. Just because the judge didn't say, "Are you sure it was a dog?" Her answer made it very clear.
Fair to say?
Yes,
So you didn't express certainty at that point.
yes, but again, thinking as a doctor and not a lawyer or a judge or someone. I'm thinking as a doctor. I'm thinking that it's never 100%, and so that's what I was going by. If I was going to be teaching medical students what those wounds were, another group of wounds, I tell people never 100% in medicine. So that's where that came from, and I apologize if I confused the court.
And what did I tell you before, Michael? I said that most experts, when they
you
come
used the
in,
word-
they don't know what a reasonable degree of medical scientific certainty is. And most lawyers don't train experts to know what that is. So they just think, hey, maybe more probable than not, more likely than not. Sometimes it should be 98%. I'm 100%.
Yeah, and no good expert is going to say absolutely always unlikely. I mean, they're not going to be that certain, because then you're painting yourselves in a hole.
They may say, hey, it's 98%, but my opinion is that it's this, right? That's what they're there for, to render their opinion. So.
Yep. And I think from the comments and stuff I'm seeing, not only do they not like this guy, but they think she's more than holding her own here.
The word possibly is even less certain than likely, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, when you're a doctor and you look at something, you say, well, the likelihood is this is the cause of this.
Oh yeah, okay.
That would be a stronger opinion than saying it's possibly this.
Correct.
Possible is even less certain, isn't it? At trial, when you were asked about the cause of the injuries, I'm going to quote you, and I can show you if you'd like. It's
all
the
goes to
trial
weight.
transcript, page 19, line 21. What you said is, I believe that these injuries were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog, because of the patent injuries.
Yes.
Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Very different. I'll just finish if I could. Very different than what you're opining today at this hearing.
I'm sorry that
That's
you
an argumentative-
think it is, and I can understand how
But
you
she's holding her
believe it is, but it's not different to me. I believed it was a dog. I was convinced it was a dog then, but going by the no 100% in medicine, I didn't say that. I am still convinced it's a dog. The one thing that's a little different is that it's an attack. After counting the series of wounds and whatever, I am convinced not only was a dog, striking once or twice, but it was actually multiple strikes by that dog.
Yeah, so take that, dude. He gives her the opportunity, and now she can reinforce not just her original opinion, which was softer, but now here's why I think it's even more an attack, not just a possible dog bite. You see his body language when she went on and on with that question, crossed arms, he, very dismissive.
Okay, now I want to get back to the testimony we were talking about, your testimony at trial, under oath, okay?
Well, Michael, isn't this all to
Your
wait?
testimony
Has
is
nothing to do with
you
Daubert.
believe
Yeah,
there was
as I
sustained
said from
by
the very
an animal,
beginning.
possibly a large dog. You expressed uncertainty that you didn't even know or have an opinion about what type of animal caused these wounds at that time. Is that fair to say?
I was leaving room for if there was for instance, another kind of animal in the vicinity that, but there's no evidence to that. There's no paw marks or anything in the ground.
What other animal do you think was in the vicinity that would have caused these?
Yeah, lots of animals in
I
the
don't
snow.
know, but I was just leaving that. Yeah, again, being a trained physician, there's no absolutes, and so that's what.
No.
The way I approached it.
Did you inquire to see more discovery, to see if there was a pack of wild animals in 34 Fairview that would have caused this? Did you reach out to any of the witnesses or the lawyers and ask if there was any reports or information suggesting another animal?
I did not.
Were you curious?
I did not. I just didn't do it.
Okay. You were asked by Mr. Jackson, trial page 23, line 3. He provided the question, does this appear, as it's a pattern injury that you see, appear consistent with an animal or a large dog? And you said yes. So you included that this, again, could have been a dog or an animal in your opinion. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Mm-hmm. I haven't.
So I'm sorry, we can't take a, we need a yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Again, at trial, page 23, line 6, you were asked, does the number of injuries that you see here relegated to just the right arm, is that consistent with an animal or a large dog? And you said yes. Okay. Do you want to see your testimony? Because I don't want to just put words in your mouth.
No, I trust you.
And so, thank you. So the question that you were asked was positing that it could have been not just a dog, but any animal. And you were agreeable to that at that time.
Again, thinking like a medical doctor, not a participant in a legal setting.
Not to belabor, but these are your words, so I want to talk to you about them. You were again
What he's
asked,
doing,
page 23,
I
line 18
think,
by Mr. Jackson,
for
based
all
on
of us
everything
watching
that we've
is he
discussed
knows this
today,
is not
Doctor,
Daubert,
is
but
it
he's
your
trying to get
opinion,
her in
based on a reasonable
contradiction,
degree of
so in
medical-
front of a jury he can cross-examine her. I would.
Yeah, I mean, this
That's
is the
what he's
preview
doing.
of exactly what he would do if there was a jury.
And
And
he's
he
going
was-
to do it more and hope that she
Yeah,
says something
that-
different in front of a jury.
That question you thought was objectionable as argumentative, I think was soft enough. I would have allowed it.
You'd allowed it? Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like you're lying, aren't you? Which arguably could be allowed as well. But yeah, he's going to dial it up if the jury's sitting there.
certainty that these injuries were from an animal attack, possibly a large dog, and you said yes. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so your opinions today that this was exclusively an animal attack caused by a large dog, that is much different in kind than the uncertainty and possibility that you admitted under oath during trial, in this case, the first time, or actually the second time you testified about it. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
It sounds like it, yes.
Okay. I think this is a good point to stop because we need to get another date.
It's the first time I'm seeing this, Michael. I hadn't watched it before. Everyone should know it's the first time. I see a lot of reviewers that watch it. I'm just giving my impressions as I'm watching it the first time.
Yeah. I mean, so there's at least 2 more hours of this to come, based on his estimate. His estimate about partway through the direct examination was, and I wrote it down here somewhere. I've got at least a few hours. That's what he wrote. So let's just say he hasn't joined the party to rave reviews. The hired gun for the prosecution. So I think she did
Well,
a great job. And
you know he's
I
good. You know he's a good technical. He really, I mean,
no doubt.
he's tough, and he's tried to. He's been with tough clients and all. It's just that this was a different animal. You know?
I think,
So I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to say
yeah,
this is. Sorry.
this animal has different teeth. I think with this guy, you can get a feel for people when you hear them in a certain setting. Unless this guy is a total chameleon, he will always have that little snarky edge to him, I think. So we'll see, because he'll get to directly examine his own witnesses, and that better disappear. So we'll see. Okay, class, that's all we have for today. Thanks
Well,
for
Michael, before we
hanging
go,
in
though,
there.
what's happening?
Oh.
What's happening on the motions? Is there anything still happening on the motions of whether the jury decided the murder counts, or not the murder?
Oh, the stuff that's still on appeal? It's still on appeal.
Still on appeal.
Yeah.
Okay.
As everybody remembers, the mystery jurors came out of the woodwork after the fact and said, hey, we were unanimous not guilty on counts 1 and count 3. What's the deal?
Right.
Of course, the judge never asked that question. It was never presented in court. There was a hearing. The judge denied accepting those as basically acquittals on those 2 counts. That is now on appeal. So, and that's part of the reason this case was pushed from January into April-ish. So we're on it. I got my credential application in today. So
good. So you're going to go
make
up
a
to
note of that
Massachusetts.
for Where in the World is Justice. Make a note of that.
Okay.
And then as long as you don't live in Ireland, you'll get a mug. So I'm still working on it, Sheila.
I still
Okay.
don't have one, Sheila.
Yeah, well, you and Sheila are in the same proverbial boat. So sorry about that.
But
All righty.
thank you, everybody, for hanging with us for almost 2 hours tonight on a Friday night on this case. And really, just fabulous that you are, because there's going to be a lot more to come.
Yep. So we'll have a great weekend. We'll get back with you on Monday. Got a few things in the pipeline, and we'll talk more then. In the meantime, I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing.
And I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. And if you like us, together we're Justice Serba, we'd like you to subscribe, like, share, and hit that notify button. And we will see you next time.